This channel's been a mixture of all my loves of gaming, from retro games, arcade games, to console gaming, and of course, if you've been keeping up with this channel, I'm a huge fan of the Xbox. And it seems like recently we're hearing a lot of rumors and a lot of people who simply just believe that the Xbox is officially dead. And I get where this is coming from. Some people are seeing that certain retailers aren't supporting or completely removing Xbox from their stores, to some people claiming that Microsoft isn't sure if they're going to have any more hardware coming out after the series lines of consoles. But a lot of this isn't fully grounded in reality, and a lot of this isn't fully proving that Microsoft or Xbox has completely left the console market. And in this video, I'm going to go over why I don't necessarily agree with Microsoft's current choices or direction with Xbox as a platform, but why I also don't think that this means that the console is totally dead. So let's take a look. The first big blow to Xbox that we've seen coming from Microsoft themselves really had to do with Game Pass. And by upping Game Pass to, in Canada anyways, to almost $40 for the best version of it, the Game Pass Ultimate Experience, we saw a lot of divided opinions and a lot of people basically stating that Microsoft doesn't understand their consumers and doesn't understand the market. And this move is totally exiling current gamers and potential gamers from purchasing new Xbox hardware. And to some degree, I don't disagree with this statement. I don't disagree that Microsoft increasing the pricing of Game Pass has, in a lot of ways, pushed away potential consumers. Now, something that I just want to highlight quickly, a lot of people don't realize that if you are already in the Microsoft ecosystem and were paying into Game Pass Ultimate before these price increases, your account's actually not affected. It's only people who are getting into Game Pass for the first time that are affected by this change. The problem, though, is Microsoft has been starting to struggle with getting their consoles out there. And by increasing the cost of Game Pass, it really doesn't seem as appealing as it used to be. To me, paying $20 a month to get top tier games, get day one Call of Duty, and these sorts of things felt like tremendous value. But when that cost has gone up to just shy of $40 for new adopters, Game Pass Ultimate doesn't seem as, in my opinion, appealing. And yes, you have different tiers of Game Pass, but realistically, for me anyways, I want day one games like Call of Duty. To me, that's one of the selling points, especially if I'm a holiday shopper who's looking at getting an Xbox or getting an Xbox for someone. I would consider getting Game Pass Ultimate purely so they could jump into the latest Call of Duty or whatever first-party exclusives that are going to be hitting on the Xbox first. And by increasing that cost of entry to being something that almost seems like a luxury purchase at this point, that exiles a lot of gamers, or pushes a lot of gamers away from that model. And so my opinion is this was not a great move, and especially not a great move because my belief, based off of everything we're seeing from potential industry insiders to people who are in the know with Xbox, is that Microsoft is going to move into a very strong hybrid strategy, stronger than they currently have. And what I mean by that is the Xbox is just a way to play Game Pass. And they've already kind of pushed this model out a bit, but I think Microsoft wants to turn Game Pass into more of a Steam store that can be used on anything versus its own self-contained platform. And I think where Microsoft has been kind of struggling is, yes, they've had some success getting it onto different devices via the cloud service or PC, but I think they want it onto something more broader, and they want to be serious competition for other platforms like Steam. And what we end up seeing, though, is that this adoption hasn't really taken flight dramatically like it should have in Microsoft's eyes beyond the Xbox hardware. And that's why I believe their future strategy is going to be something more in the lines of an Xbox piece of hardware that's more like a modular PC than a bracketed console where you have two different tiers like a Series X or a Series S. In other words, you're gonna basically get a easier to use or more consumer friendly gaming PC that integrates Game Pass into it. And I'm personally okay with this model. We're already seeing Sony push their first party games onto different devices like PC. And we're seeing that slowly starting to happen with a bunch of different gaming devices. And so when I look at that strategy, it makes sense that Microsoft wants to be at the head of the curve, and I think in a lot of ways, this will help Microsoft survive in the long run. The problem is, if Game Pass is going to stay as expensive as it currently is, I think it's going to mean a lot of dark days for Xbox in the short term. And what I mean by that is, I don't see people looking at buying a Series S anymore as being this appealing device that's, a cost-effective gaming device, especially with the fact that the hardware has gone up tremendously in price. My opinion is this: the Series S, the 512 configuration, when you were able to get that for around $300 Canadian for such an economical price, and get Game Pass at $20 a month, that was probably at one point the best value in gaming. The problem is we no longer have the 512 configuration, we have the 1 terabyte configuration, and that's just shy of $500 Canadian now. Plus you mix that in with the expensive price of Game Pass, it doesn't seem like a high value item anymore that makes sense for the common consumer. And so, in my opinion, these two missteps in the current climate of Xbox, I can see why this signals the death of Microsoft and Xbox as a hardware or console experience for some people, but I don't think that fully paints a clear picture of what's going on. I think this is Microsoft trying to recuperate costs in a short term, and unfortunately they're not doing a great job at it. And so what I believe is going to happen is we're going to see Microsoft potentially renege on some of this. We're already seeing insiders state that Microsoft isn't backing out of the console race. They're still going to be committed to console development. But I think Microsoft is seriously going to have to reconsider their Game Pass strategy for the long run. And what I mean is they're going to have to consider what that cost of entry looks like and what value they can bring to either justify or backpedal a bit and get higher adoption rates at a lower price of Game Pass. And yes, we're seeing some retailers seem to be slowly backing out of stocking Xbox, but realistically, I think this isn't, again, a clear picture of what's going on generally. A lot of retailers aren't stocking as much game console stuff as they used to generally. And we're seeing that model is becoming smaller and smaller overall. And so I think that it just turns out that Xbox definitely is not as popular as PlayStation, but even if you go to certain stores, you'll see that they're pretty scant with both PlayStation and Xbox stuff generally. So I don't think this is completely a clear picture that signals that retailers have completely revoked supporting Microsoft. I just think generally gamers are finding different ways to purchase consoles, to purchase games, and sometimes those don't involve a physical brick and mortar store. But with this all being said, am I defending Microsoft's current actions with their price hike of Game Pass or their price hikes of the hardware? No. And I think realistically, if Microsoft was smart, they would consider bringing back a Series S style device with less storage space at a cheaper price point with a more affordable Game Pass option that still gives all the bells and whistles of Ultimate. But realistically, it looks like Microsoft, in the short term anyways, is going to really learn the hard way, which is really unfortunate because I've been a pretty strong supporter of the Game Pass and Microsoft ecosystem. But with these sort of odd changes, I think Microsoft is going to seriously have to reconsider their strategy and reconsider it quick, especially with the next generation of consoles coming up in the next year or 2 years here.